So what I'm going to be talking about is a couple of things today. One is technology, and the other is conversation. Technology, I think, is important because I think a lot of cognitive strategies are not going to be applicable by classroom teachers. You're going to need computers. They're too hard for a teacher to implement in a classroom. You've got to have technology. That's one claim. The second claim is that conversation, adaptive conversation, is key. It's through this adaptive conversation that you weave in some of these principles that you've heard about that will be very key. And I might say adaptive conversation occurred in the apprenticeship models of education that happened for millennia. It's not until the Industrial Revolution where you had classrooms, and this is only 200 or 300 years. This is a minor hiccup in history. And what we're going to do is return to that adaptive conversation, and we're going to do it with technology. And now that we're in the revolution of knowledge, the knowledge revolution, the students are expecting more interweaving these technologies, more of this conversational sort of interaction. So I think what we're going to do is return to what's natural. So, what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about, briefly, principles of learning and instruction that people have proposed in cognition over the years. Then I'm going to talk about auto-tutor. This is a system that helps people learn by holding a conversation in natural language in a way that's adaptive to them. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about impact of agents on learning. So let me start with principles of learning and instruction. You know, there's a lot of different traditions in learning. You get people in psychology, you get people in education, you get people in machine learning and computer learning environments. You have all these communities talking about learning. Interestingly, they don't talk to each other very much. You have conferences associated with each of these, and they don't attend each other's conferences. And it's, you might get 1% overlap. It's just amazing. So I've tried to keep track of all of these communities in my research because I think you need to in order to build technologies that really weave in good pedagogy. So a number of institutions have actually got a bunch of researchers together to come up with good practices. So it all comes under the principles of learning. What are these principles of learning? And in Institute of Education Sciences, they came out and had all these brainy people coming together. Many of them have already been mentioned. And they were asked to come up with principles that are based on evidence and that can be applied by teachers in the classroom. Okay, that was the charge. And so these are the 7 principles. These are the 7 principles. I'm not going to go over them. My favorite is number 7, ask deep explanatory questions, like why questions, how, what if not. But I'm not going to talk about these, but I will say that each of these will best be delivered through technology. It's just too hard to expect teachers in a classroom to implement these reliably and sensibly, because they're all complex. Actually, all of these statements are both true and false. They're true in some conditions, but not others. I think you're going to need technology in order to tune it in a right way so these are implemented reliably and impactfully. So that was Institute of Education Sciences. Of course, APA and APS had to get involved. So there was this joint meeting where they got about 30 people from these fields together, and they came up with 25 principles. Now, some of these principles didn't have a lot of evidence. Most of them did, and they were trying to identify which of these principles work and what the evidence is. I'm not going to list all of these, but I just want you to be aware that, once again, you had these community of people who wanted to talk about principles of learning. More recent one is the Principles for Struggling Readers. This is a National Academy of Sciences report, and this is just a list of many of these principles. And obviously you can't jot these down. I think these PowerPoints are available, I'm not sure. But now the claim is to reliably implement these, you're going to have technology. You're not going to be able to do teacher training in order to get teachers to implement these reliably in a classroom. It's just not going to happen. So the Memphis team has been working with the Army Research Lab. This is finishing the second year on a 5-year project on how to implement these principles in intelligent tutoring systems. It's called GIFT. That's Generalized Intelligent Framework for Tutoring. And the military is very serious about implementing these. And interestingly, the military has really taken the lead in a lot of these learning technologies in the past. In fact, the NSF's role and IES role is rather recent. It's more like 15 years, but the military was always there. So let me shift now to AutoTutor, because what we want to do is build a computer system that helps people learn by implementing these learning principles and also making it very conversational. We think making it conversational will make it more natural. It'll be less this kind of grilling and testing sort of mindset and more weaving it in a conversation in a sensible way. So we build these with agents. This is just a smear of agents. And people argue a lot on what do you want the agent to look like, sound like, cartoonish versus real, that sort of thing. But actually what it looks like doesn't matter. It's the content and the adaptability, the interactivity, that's what matters. So coming up, saying the right thing at the right time, giving the right problem at the right time, that's what matters. It's not the pretty face. So this was our old version of AutoTutor. It was in computer literacy, where you ask a question, and these questions require reasoning, and they require about a sentence-like answer, about a paragraph-level answer. So this is a question about how an operating system works, and it may take 100 turns back and forth, tutor, student, in order to answer this question. And so you have a conversational agent that does it. Text-to-speech engines, a little bit of gesture. You can either have it typed in or spoken, doesn't matter. Speaking and typing is about the same when it comes to learning gains. So there's many functions these agents may have. You can have them available when initiated. When a student asks for help, they can have a little agent and it will interact with them. The problem is students don't ask for help reliably and sensibly. In fact, the conditional probability that they'll ask for help, given they need help, is only 5%. Students are not good self-regulated learners. But another way is through a navigational guide. When a student encounters a complex interface or tries to do a simulation, they typically don't know what to do next. So you can have the agent be a navigational guide to guide them along. Another is through modeling. You can have multiple agents there, and they can model all sorts of pedagogical things. You have agents interacting, they can show how to reason, they can think while they reason. You can do all that. Whatever you know about psychology can be implemented in these agents, and it can be done reliably, crisply, adaptively. So the hard ones are adaptive and intelligent and conversationally sensitive. That's what we've tried to do with AutoTutor, is to make it very adaptive. Not just choreographed agents interacting where you can model from it, but much more adaptive and intelligent. And these agents can take on many roles. They can be peer students, they can be good students, bad students, they can be tutors, they can be mentors, many different roles. You can have adversarial agents if you look at group interaction. Whatever roles you want to give it, you can do it. So, before we started this, we analyzed tutors. Imagine, about 120 tutors of varying ability being videotaped in excruciating detail, transcribed, where we exhausted every person in Memphis willing to transcribe videotapes. Not a fun job I'd ever want to do again. But we figured out what they do. And what we find is that they don't do much very sophisticated. We have documented in excruciating detail the extent to which they do Socratic tutoring, modeling, scaffolding, fading, reciprocal teaching, building on prerequisites, sophisticated motivational techniques, all sorts of scaffolding of self-regulated learning. We've done this, and we tried to hallucinate any vestige of these sophisticated strategies in these tutoring protocols, and we came up with nada. So they're not doing that. What are they doing? They're doing expectation and misconception tailored dialogue. What is that? Well, you ask them a question or give them a problem, and these are problems that require explanatory reasoning. During this 100-turn interaction, the students are articulating fragmentary, vague, ungrammatical language over many turns. And you see what happens, and the tutor usually has in their mind expectations of what they want the student to say. And so as the blah, blah, blah of the student accumulates, it compares it to these expectations. And when they feel an expectation has been articulated by the student, this is very active learning. You try to get the student. Bad tutors simply lecture, we know that. But if you have one that promotes active learning, you have these expectations, like 3 sentences you want them to articulate. And so what you do is as they articulate it, you check it off. But it turns out they just don't spontaneously just articulate all the information. You need to give them hints. You need to prompt them to get like single words out of them. And some of them, the best you can get is yes or no. So you have to have dialogue moves that kind of eke out or extract whatever knowledge they have, and sometimes the tutor has to fill in the cracks. And so as they're doing it, sometimes the student articulates a misconception. At that point, you have to correct it. You heard from Roddy that if they have a misconception, you have to correct it quick. That's what tutors normally do, is they quickly correct it. Some people think that you should have them learn how to self-correct, but tutors don't do that. And it may be not a good idea in the first place. I don't know. So, in any event, this is the sort of mechanism that drives tutoring. And what's nice about this is we can implement this on a computer. Many of the sophisticated tutoring strategies are too hard to implement on a computer. This you can do it reliably. Tutors are good. A tutor will improve learning compared to classroom teaching for an equivalent amount of time by about 0.4 effect size, 0.4 sigma. So if you can get a computer to do it, sometimes it's hard to get tutors. There's a big dropout rate. They get sick of it. Computers never get tired, although some of them do, but you know. So in managing one turn, typically in a human tutor and also auto tutor, first you give them short feedback on their whatever they said. Then you advance the dialogue by giving a hint or a prompt or some sort of speech act to advance the covering of the problem. And then what you do is you have to give a signal to turn the floor to the student to contribute, like by asking a question or a gesture. So that's how you manage a turn. So you have this main question and an answer. You might pump them for more information. You then give hints in order to extract information, and you prompt to get particular words to be articulated by the student, and then when misconceptions come up, you correct them. That's the mechanism of human tutors and also what we implemented in AutoTutor. So you can also combine it with simulation by asking a question. You have the talking head guide them. You can have them control parameters. You can do simulations, and you can get them to describe what happens. So many students don't know how to do simulations in a simulation environment. They don't do anything kind of logically. And these agents can kind of give them hints and direction on how to intelligently do it. Now, I wanted to give a demonstration of this, and of the many presentations I've given, this is the all-time favorite. This is our physics tutor. Oops, sorry. Let's see if this works.
An airplane flying horizontally drops a packet on a pre-selected spot when it is right above the target. Does the packet hit the target? Explain.
The packet will hit the target because it'll fall straight down.
Good job.
Sure.
Okay, what else can you say?
Pump.
When gravity acts on the packet, it'll cause it to fall straight down.
Good. Think about this. What can you say about the packet's velocity at the point of release?
Hint. That's a hint.
The horizontal velocity of the packet is the same as the plane before it's released and after it's released.
Good. Try this. The velocities of the objects before and just after the packet's release are.
That's to get them to hit.
The same.
Great. We're almost there.
So it can go on and on and on and on, and that's a lot of fun, but I've got limited time. So after we created AutoTutor, there was a flood of agent-based systems that came out of University of Memphis and our Interdisciplinary Institute for Intelligent Systems. And these are a lot of them. It covered reading at a deeper level, writing. It included how to train curiosity and getting people to ask good questions. Most questions of students are shallow. Most teacher questions are shallow. So how do you get them to give deeper questions? We had people on physics, tutor systems on physics, on biology, self-regulated learning and metacognition, and all of these help learning. They've been tested out. They help people learn compared to various controls. We've even had some commercialized by Pearson Education. One of these, Operation ARIES, helps people learn scientific research methods. In this serious game that lasts about 15 hours, it tries to get them to learn these principles and apply the principles in real tasks. And it tries to combine game aspects and learning aspect. That's been a hard thing to do. It's very difficult to mesh learning in a game-like environment and motivational and deep learning, because actually there's a slight negative correlation between liking and learning. The harder you make the material, the less they like it. And so often if you just ask people, do you like the learning environment, you're going to be misled. They might like it very well, but it's not going to help deep learning. So I wanted to mention Trialogs, because this is what we've been working on in the last 5 years a lot. This is two agents interacting with a human. And you can have different types of Trialogs. You can have vicarious learning, where a tutor agent interacts with a student agent. You can have teachable agent, where a human has to teach a student agent. And then you can have tutoring. In fact, these are the rules that we apply. If they're low in ability, then you have vicarious learning. If it's medium ability, regular tutorial dialogue, high ability, a teachable agent. These Trialogs now we're applying in our Adult Literacy Center. We have a large center grant on the study of adult literacy. There's 70 million people in the United States who don't read at a level where they can get a good job, what we're doing is trying to have these trialogue agents to help them learn how to read better. If I had time, I'd show you some of the examples, but I don't have time. Educational testing service is now interested in these because you can assess through the trialogues how well students learn and how good they are. So in this sort of environment, you have a virtual world with agents, and the human interacts with them. And so will they read this sign, like not to bring water into a library? And then you have a doofus agent who keeps making mistakes, and you see how well the human corrects them. And then you have a smarty pants agent that kind of rescues things if they go awry. And the idea is, in this virtual environment, in a half an hour, you will assess them on reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And it's all through these agent sort of trialogue environments. It also has them in science. So I've given you kind of a sense, a snapshot of these different agents. Let me turn a little bit now to the impact of agents on learning. And we've conducted about 25 studies to assess learning with various comparison conditions, but let me give you my favorite. This is physics, helping them learn physics at a deeper level. And there's 4 conditions where college students were randomly assigned to either human tutor through computer-mediated conversation, auto-tutor, reading a textbook for an equivalent amount of time, or doing nothing. Okay? So I'm curious, how many think the human tutor gets the best learning at a deeper level? Raise your hand. Okay. How about auto-tutor? Very good. You can collect your $20 on the way out. Okay. How about reading a textbook? Now, everybody here is old enough to vote. Yeah. Reading nothing? Doing nothing? Okay. So here's the data. So fortunately, the human tutor and auto tutor are a tie, statistical tie. The other interesting thing is reading a textbook is not any different than doing nothing. Textbooks are just great for shallow knowledge. Just great. But you don't get deep knowledge. This is physics. How about it's been replicated in computer literacy and also scientific critical thinking about scientific reasoning. Just giving a textbook out there and doing a lecture like this is fantastic for shallow knowledge. And that gives you cues on what you might need to do elsewhere. But you need something interactive to do some of these things that we've heard about today, whether it's analogical reasoning or actually producing and retrieving things or putting them in desirable difficulties, what we call cognitive disequilibrium. You need some of that before they're going to get into the deeper waters. So my conclusions is shallow knowledge is acquired through didactic training. Deep knowledge requires applying your knowledge to cases. And this is something I didn't have time to talk about, but which we have evidence for, is all concepts are not equal. For some concepts, all you need is didactic training and they're good to go. Others, you can even have a lot of didactic training, of application of cases. In our learning environment, we try to get them to learn correlation is not the same thing as causation, and after 15 hours of all of these learning environments, learning that concept on a transfer task was only about 20%. So, whereas other concepts like operational definition, no problem, much sooner. So, those are the 3 major things, and I want to end by saying our challenge is to get these agents, whether it's a trialogue or a dialogue or a quadrilogue or a quintilogue, to try to be sensitive to SCAM, their social, cognitive, affective, and motivational mechanisms. And you build these computer systems to be adaptive in this way, and this cannot happen without an interdisciplinary arena. No one field can tackle this alone. It takes an interdisciplinary village to do it. And what you need is a training environment with this interdisciplinarity, or it's not going to happen. Thanks.